Chapter 4 Truth Is. Reth stared at his computer screen as he deleted all his files. He was taking the biggest leap of faith by quitting his job and pursuing what he loved most. But with that came a long list of sacrifices and changes he had to make in his life. He walked out of the office on a hot Saturday night after getting all of his accounts up to date and transferring his notes to those who would take over his files. He was happy, and yet misery rested on his shoulders. You always said without risk there could be no reward. I sure hope you know what you were talking about, Dr. H. A lot has changed since I saw you 67 days ago, and I'm sure this risk would make you proud, he mumbled. He took another glance at his phone that had been blowing up for the past 3 hours and noticed it was another woman hinting to a night out that he was not up for. He denied the call and got in his truck where he drove for miles until he approached an abandoned warehouse. He walked the property for a while and found himself silently praying, something he had not done since his dad died. When he noticed what he had been doing, a smile crept onto his face and he took a deep breath. He walked to the front of the building and gripped the door handle that reflected his hard work and a dream that was coming through. He pushed the big door open and stood there in awe of the progress he made. What the? He shrieked as he spun around after feeling a hand on his shoulder. Hey, I didn't mean to scare you, Nia whispered as she jumped back. Did never come and go, and I didn't get the memo, he shrugged, his mouth still open. Nia shook her head. Miracles do happen. How did you find me and why? Well, it wasn't easy. It took me a while to get over some of the things you said, until I started to see the truth in them. I realized that you were hurt, and it was partly, like 33%, my fault. Maybe. She smiled nervously. Plus, Jimerson wouldn't stop calling me. I'm happy I donated to Dr. H Fund, but I wish I'd never given them my name and number, because your friend is annoying. Reth chuckled. It had to be difficult for the both of you, I'm sure. Well, I actually thought it was one of your father's new shops or something, since I found it under his name. I was hoping maybe he could help me understand you a bit, she admitted. Plus, that little twerp didn't want to give me your physical address. He just wanted us to do a group chat where he could mediate. Negative. Reth was unmoved by any of the information and turned around and proceeded to walk inside the building. He walked the halls and stared out of the windows, all while being followed by Nia, who was paying close attention to him. I sacrificed everything for this place, and I'm so afraid it's going to be a disaster, he admitted to her. Okay, so this is your space, obviously. Why does it look like a school? A well-furnished one, Nia commented. It's a youth center for boys. There were a lot of things I wish I had when I was growing up, and now that I'm older and capable, I want to feel that need for others. I had no self-esteem, no understanding of who I was, loved the sciences, but was afraid to explore it. These kids won't be trapped in the cycle. Oh, I can see that being great for the community. Great job. She smiled, giving him a thumbs up. Reth chuckled to himself. You were always extra cheesy when you were trying to apologize without having to say you were sorry. I've moved on if you have. Is that convenient for you? Only if it is for you. I'm not sure what you think I owe you, she responded. He breathed. Reth shook his head and proceeded to the second floor. Nia hesitated for a moment, then followed him upstairs, where she saw his childhood globes and maps positioned around the room. She admired the big open space and large windows that let the sun illuminate the area. So, all y'all own the building and the entire lot? Nia asked, impressed. I think so, he chuckled. I mean, I better, for how much I paid. So, your dad doesn't know what he owns? His brows furrowed, then he chuckled to himself. You know my dad is a junior, and I follow as the third. I just leave those 3 sticks off. No, she stuttered. Her eyes slimmed and her head lowered in thought. What an amazing best friend I was, huh? He nodded, then walked over to a window and stared out of it. I'm sorry. I never realized that you and your father had the same name. I just always called him Mr. King when he was around. I really didn't know him that well. Is that the reason everyone always called you King? Yep, he responded. Maybe we could all have dinner or something to catch up, she suggested. I can help go over your paperwork for this place and ensure you own the whole gamut, she smiled. Paid in full, he laughed, trying not to seem foolish. I would admit I didn't read much, but I'm hoping the realtor did. Truth is, my mind wasn't in the right place when I bought the place about a year ago now, he admitted, as he turned to look at her. Nia shook her head and walked to him. It would be my pleasure to look over your documents and ensure you have your ducks in a row. It's what I do. Property litigation. It's my expertise as a real estate broker. That's why you're so cutthroat. Damn, they don't have a chance against you, do they? He smiled. On the contrary, I help my clients have a fighting chance, she corrected with a wink. Oh, for the little people, huh? That's meritorious of you. Nia's right brow dipped and she chuckled. What that was? Hey, don't come at my words when you still use that island dialect that still confuses me, he chuckled. I'm still trying to use more words, expand my vocabulary, and this is the first time all week I got to use that word. Nia chuckled and began to walk around. I miss home. Left so long ago, I sometimes feel disconnected with our vernacular, she sighed. But this is a big move, Reth. I'm sure your parents are proud of you. She walked around a table until she was glancing in his direction and stayed quiet as he continued to stare out the window. He wasn't one for words, but he was always interactive with her. Hey, I came by to talk to you. Well, you're dead about things. I didn't know him well, but I was hoping I could get more than what Ma gave me. Since that's not happening, I might as well say I'm sorry for our friendship. I never realized how selfish I was in it. I guess I had to be so many things to other people that I took advantage of how safe I was with you. You never placed expectations on me and just let me be. And I needed that. I'm just sorry that I could never be kinder to your heart, she apologized. He turned to look at her and gave a small smile. That was big of you, he responded, as he then rolled his eyes as he looked down at his buzzing phone. Hey, would you mind if I take this call real quick? You're fine. I'm happy you finally recognize it, he winked. She rolled her eyes and smiled as he walked off. She grabbed a seat and spun slowly in it as she waited for his return. Not sure what you expected today, Nee, but this was a good start, she whispered to herself. She grew bored of sitting and began to circle the room until she grew curious about what he was doing. She found herself downstairs looking for him, and when she stumbled upon him, she stood silently out of view. We aren't together and won't ever be together, especially when you lied to my face after you swore you were being upfront with me, Carla. I'm not living that life anymore. I just want to be done with dating for a while. Yes, that includes sex, he snapped. He blew off her breath and rolled his eyes. Why can't you just forget about me? Reth huffed. Look, I'm hanging up. I'm not arguing with you or bending. It is what it is. You got a home to go home to, so just drop me. Reth hung up and blew off his frustration with a loud grunt before walking back into the building, where Nia scurried to act as though she wasn't listening to his conversation. This is some high-tech gear you have in this center, and the location is great. I think if we could find some unique wildlife or plants in the lot beside you, we could petition for it to be a wildlife preserve. That would mean no neighbors, and you got an animal habitat in your backyard, Nia suggested. Wow, all of that, huh? Sounds amazing, so I will do whatever it takes. I actually got the paperwork for this place at my house. I can bring it to you whenever you have time, wherever that would be. I actually live about a city and a half over, so I can give you a time and date, and we could look everything over. Or I could. Reth paused. He looked down and turned his phone on silent, then fiddled with his phone while Nia looked on with a raised brow that ushered in a smirk. Woman trouble? She chuckled. Gotta have a woman to have that type of problem. Hey, what about dinner? Maybe since you're already out here. My treat? Nia's smirk perked up as she ran her hand over her slick down bun. Still interested? After everything, huh? Reth smiled, then moved in close. Foolishly. He noticed Nia lean back slightly and tense up. He cleared his throat and scratched the back of his head. I'm sorry for my part. He paused. Once more, and this time he grew visibly perturbed. Nia could hear the consistent buzzing sound from his pants leg as it vibrated against something in his pocket. Just give me one moment, he asked, before quickly walking out. Reth ran off out of view for a few minutes, giving Nia time to think about how she should respond to his dinner request. She walked around the room with her arms folded until she ran into flags from around the world. She spotted 2 flags in particular that she gifted to Reth after she returned from a trip back home when they were in middle school. Sorry about that, he apologized. Seems like you're an important guy, she commented. Nah, just a crazy chick, he admitted. But I'm sure you could relate with Kuma and all. He cleared his throat and rocked on his feet. It may not be my business, but why did you 2 split? I'm pretty sure you left him, he chuckled. Surprised by the question, Nia opened her mouth, then closed it. She thought for a few seconds as she ran her hand over the British Virgin Islands flag, then the U.S. Virgin Islands flag. Funny that you know I broke it off, but I left because he wanted me to convert to Islam and be okay with having sister wives. So, you were kind of right back then. He was grooming me since we met. She turned and looked at him and shook her head in thought. What really pushed me was the religion thing. I know it should have been the whole having a plural family, but I just couldn't fathom having yet another religion forced down my throat. First it was Rastafarianism by my parents, and he pretty much joined in after we met them. Then it was some watered-down form of Buddhism. I just couldn't do it. Plus, I had already left religion behind for a relationship with God. Life started to feel livable again. So religion, huh? Not me, Reth asked with furrowed brows. She took a breath and rolled her eyes. Despite what you did, our breakup had nothing to do with you, she chuckled awkwardly. How did you possibly heal from all that? All those years of people manipulating you and stealing your power from you, he asked. Ran back to which I came? She chuckled. I took a year-long trip home and split my time between St. John and Tortola. I had plenty of days of sun, sea, and reflection. Was I a part of that reflection, evolving from what we had? He asked, his gaze intense. She remained quiet, her mind searching for an answer that wasn't there. She gave a quick half smile and looked down at her purse, which she fiddled with. Reth shook his head and found a post to lean against as he stared out the window. He was once again at a crossroad, but it felt like there was more to lose this time. He would have to choose his words wisely, but he wasn't up for the game. Do you remember the first time we met? He asked, as his gaze settled softly on Nia. She smiled, softly, then looked up. We were probably 4 if my memory serves me right. Probably, but I still remember the moment I saw you, and I think that's when feelings became real. I remember thinking you had to be the coolest person to have ropes in your hair. They both chuckled at their inside joke, and as Nia opened her mouth to respond, she heard his phone buzzing. Reth rolled his eyes and tried to ignore it, but it started back up again. I never knew a vibrating phone was so audible, she joked. My bad, he apologized as he took the phone out of his pocket. Give me one more moment, please. You're about to run out of moments, she yawned. Reth walked off to take the call, but this time it wasn't too far, so Nia knew it couldn't be the same person. She rolled her neck to stretch and tilted her head in the direction of Reth. She quickly picked up on Jimmy's name and grew unconcerned in the conversation. I'm truly sorry for the interruptions, but that was Jimmy, and I had to take it since he is my next big investor, Reth explained, walking back. Oh, wow. He's donating to your center? Not exactly, he chuckled. We have a bet for $20,000 that I will easily win, I hope. Haven't you learned anything about these silly bets of yours? She groaned. It's different. This bet will help me in my personal life and in business. So what is it? Don't laugh, but I have to be celibate for a while since he doesn't think I can refrain from betting women if my life depended on it. I lost out on $5,000 with Kilroy when I was supposed to refrain from sex for 3 months. And in a weekend after a whole month, I messed it up. Wait, how often do all y'all bet on weird things? She questioned. Reth chuckled, a bit embarrassed. He scratched the back of his head and tilted his head to the side. Depends on how often we get together. A few bets a year, but in the history of our bets, I only lost one. He gloated. The hammer wasn't to blame, though. I was in a crazy place. Nia broke out in laughter and shook her head. You name your penis and you lose to one of the simplest things, keeping your dick in its cave? I guess no woman is safe around you, huh? She grunted, then folded her arms. It's not always that simple, and I don't just bed anybody. You were always so ready to get busy that I guess once you started, you could never stop, huh? He pulled back, confused by her words. Well, damn. You think I'm just in these streets being a gigolo, huh? Reth shook his head and started to walk off. Not that it's any of your business, but my digits are still singular, and I only started in college. His eyes rolled in his head as he shook it. Can't say the same for some people, he mumbled. You're a bold-faced liar, 'cause Kelly from AP Science in the 11th grade was your first, and I can't see Mr. Razzle-Dazzle Pop stopping at a single digit. Her eyes slimmed, and her lips curled into a cruel smirk. You were probably always thinking of me, she hissed. Kelly made that story up to see if you would get jealous, and you were not my sole focus in college. Those girls were entertaining enough, so don't flatter yourself, he grumbled. Unlike you, I actually listened to you, and my prize is still remembering the details of your first time, which I really didn't care to know about. First off, I don't remember telling you anything about my first time. She snapped her hands on her hips. Eldridge in the 11th grade right after the Kelly situation? I should have realized then that you did want me, or at least didn't want anyone else to have me. I reckon your body count is either 2 or 3 plus 1. What? Look, high school wasn't my proudest moment, but you need to leave my count out of this. And it's 2 plus nothing. Nah, you forgot to put me in there, so it's 2 plus 1, he insisted with a playful gaze. Oh, how you wish, she hissed as she folded her arms and turned her back to him. Reth chuckled under his breath and leaned back on the post behind him as he looked away for a moment. He fixed his mouth to speak, but remained quiet as he caught her shaking her head, as if she was shaking thoughts away. Reth closed the gap between them and waited for her to return to the conversation. Maybe you were a better friend back then. She shook her head and turned around and jumped back when she saw how close he was to her. I am, she stammered. I still care about you too. I just was bad at it for some reason. Maybe you could have returned my phone calls or perhaps listened to me after college. I don't think we realized how unhealthy our friendship was because it was one-sided. I care for you more than I care for myself, so I put what I wanted to the side to be there for you. Okay, I'm sorry. I know I wasn't a great best friend to you, but maybe we could make things better this time around? She insisted. No expectations, just 2 people being kind and supportive to one another. I've already accepted that we can't have that, nor do I want that, he admitted. Nia took a step back from Reth and let him walk away as she tried to remember why she even tracked him down. The entire conversation has been a back and forth summed up as a big maybe. You were the sweetest guy I had ever met, and all I wanted in return was me, my attention, and I took advantage of that. I also wanted to protect that. Everyone said what we had was rare and special, and I didn't want to lose that to a horrible relationship. So if it meant being obnoxious and about not being in a relationship with you, well, I did it, she confessed. I bet all those people who you listen to are living happily ever after in their perfect marriage with their soulmates. In case you didn't catch it, that was sarcasm, he mocked. Her shoulders dropped as she stepped closer to him. You don't have to be this mean, Reth. I'm being this way because it hurts, Nia. I would be with you in a heartbeat. It doesn't matter how shitty things get between us. I stay with love in my heart for you, and it hurts that you don't feel the same way, nor do you even realize what I'm going through. You mean how they got, like past tense? She fumbled. Nah, but it doesn't matter. I really don't feel like losing twice. I don't understand. Dumb it down for me, she begged. I'm my father's son, he breathed. Nia's brows furrowed as her mouth hung open. I'm starting to think this isn't about me. Reth rolled his shoulders back and lifted his head up as he began to walk off. Nia hurried behind him and grabbed his arm. I want to be there for you, but you have to speak to me, she whispered tenderly. My dad passed, he mumbled with his back turned. Her hands dropped down to her side and she nodded her head up and down in revelation. Recently? Nah, a year ago. Alone in his house because he was a stoic man, everyone says. He wasn't stoic. He was detached and full of flaws. My mother loved him so much she reduced herself to be with him, and I resented him for making her into that person. But look at me. What am I out here doing? Nia looked confused, but engaged. I'm the worst part of my parents, and that realization hurts. Reth stopped talking and started to walk hastily to his car. Reth, wait! Reth! He got into his car angry at himself and sped off down the dirt road. He did enough talking and figured it would be best to leave before he said anything else. He got to the end of the road and got out of his car and kicked the dirt until his body calmed down. He wasn't the stoic image of his father anymore. He was tired, broken, and lonely. This must have been the stupidest thing I've ever done, he chuckled. I already said that if I saw her, I was going to be apathetic. What was that crap back there and all weekend? Plus, I left her in my building with no way of locking up. Who gives a shit, right? He sat and evaluated his words and decided what was said had to be and didn't give any more thought to it. He sat and looked through his messages and got a few laughs out of the college chat he was in with his closest friends and found himself wishing he didn't just open a can of worms with Nia. He eventually swallowed his pride and stood firm against his fears and got back on the road to head back to the center. When he arrived, he saw the door shut and Nia's car missing, but didn't expect much since she was great at running, but so was he. He placed a padlock on the door and walked around to where he could see the sun setting in the sky. As he walked further in, he could see a blue Genesis with its door open and hope reignited in him. He took a calming breath and approached the vehicle. Before he could get closer than 2 feet, he saw a leg step out and nodded to himself. I'm sorry for leaving like that, he mumbled as Nia appeared. I get it. Men combust when there's too much emotion in the air. I appreciate you sparing us the gory cleanup. For a second there, I thought you were going to confess your undying love for me. She winked. He remained quiet and chuckled to himself as he looked off at the lake. She came close and nudged him, and he nudged her back. He wasn't sure what she was thinking, but he was shutting down. They watched as the sun retreated in the darkening sky, not a word spoken between them for the past few minutes. We were always good about being quiet with each other, he mumbled. I'm sorry for not knowing your father passed. I know he was often a sore subject, but that doesn't mean I couldn't have done more to know what you were going through. She paused for a moment and took a breath. I miss us. Not the fake us, she explained. I don't, he blurted. Nia looked up at the 6'2" man whose silhouette looked massive with his arms folded. She began to chew on her bottom lip and wonder as angst bubbled up in her. What do you mean? She blurted unexpectedly. Startled by her emotions, she quickly looked away and took several deep breaths. Reth chuckled under his breath and turned to Nia, whose brows met in the middle of her wrinkled forehead. She could sense his gaze piercing through her wall and returned his gaze. Once again, the two stood in silence, but this time it grew uncomfortable enough to make her skin itch and her mind disconnect from her mouth. What do you really want from me? She grunted. I already said sorry. I own my part in our friendship, Me ain't got much more to give you. Reth took a deep breath to let out his frustration. He looked up as the streetlights came on, one by one, down the partially paved road. Why did you come looking for me? He inquired. Nia slapped her arm and looked back up at him and shook her head left to right. Reth pressed his lips together and looked away. Ow! She yelped. You okay? Reth asked apathetically. Yeah, but I won't be if we stay out here any longer. I'm about to be a feast for these mosquitoes. Let's do dinner tonight, he suggested. I have clients to see in the morning and I've already been here too long, she answered. Reth breathed. But my schedule will be cleared later in the day and throughout the weekend. Maybe we can try this conversation again then. Where do you live? Reth inquired, all while still facing the lake. 2 hours away in Mooresville. He turned and faced her with a stern gaze. Okay, head home and rest up for your day. Send me your address and I'll make it my business to spend the next few days in Mooresville with you, he pledged. She squinted and looked away, then back up at him. Her shoulders dropped and her face looked displeased. I won't expect anything if you don't. We're old friends catching up and letting our older selves resolve what our younger selves were too afraid to do, he smiled. Nia nodded her head in agreement, and he lifted her hand to signal her to her car. She gave a quick smile and walked back to her Genesis, and he followed. He closed her door, and she fixed her GPS and drove off. Reth stood there, staring silently with both hands on top of his head, as the wind began to pick up and whistle through the many trees around him. Truth is, I'm still that boy you first met with the same eyes for you, he mumbled to himself. Still afraid you won't want me. He sighed and walked off to the student center and disappeared behind its doors.